The hum of the Nexus Station's artificial gravity field buzzed softly in the background as Elias Winters sat at the back of the crowded classroom, his fingers tapping a slow, rhythmic beat on the cold, metal desk. The room smelled faintly of recycled air and the sterile, almost metallic scent of war preparation. Cadets from every corner of the galaxy filled the seats, their uniforms pressed, their eyes sharp. Except for Elias. He sat, unnoticed and mostly forgotten, just another face among hundreds. The tall, lanky human cadet in seat 43A. He wasn't the best. He wasn't the worst. But he had never been special. He didn't have the warrior's blood that ran through the veins of the Ilker or the calm, calculating intellect of the Vashari. He wasn't the kind to catch the eye of instructors like Commander Zorak. And today, like every other day, Elias knew he'd go unnoticed. A faint buzz interrupted his thoughts. At the front of the room, the instructor, Lieutenant Oren, was droning on about the intricacies of advanced combat protocols, again. No one was listening. The Ilker cadets in the front row were whispering in their native tongue, while the Tesseran students in the back exchanged silent gestures. Elias had long stopped trying to fit in with the rest of them. He was fine with being invisible. That's when it happened. A sudden, sharp knock on the door sliced through the drone of voices and the hum of machinery. Elias's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. The class fell into an uneasy silence as the door slid open with a soft hiss. A tall officer, clad in dark, ceremonial armor, stepped into the room. His presence commanded attention. The officer was holding a gleaming, alien-made metal, the edges glinting in the fluorescent light as if it were forged from something far more precious than the usual alloys. Elias's heart skipped a beat. Cadet Elias Winters, the officer's voice cut through the silence. It was low, gravelly, and filled with authority. Elias froze. His name echoed in the empty space of the room, bouncing off the walls and back into his own ears. He hadn't been called on for anything in months. It was either a mistake or the kind of joke that would make a room of seasoned cadets laugh themselves silly. Cadet Winters? The officer's voice again, this time more insistent. Seat 43A. Elias felt the eyes of every cadet turn toward him. The whispers began immediately, murmurs that swirled around him like a storm. Seat 43A? That was his seat. The forgotten one. The unremarkable cadet. The officer didn't wait for Elias to respond. He walked straight toward him, his boots clicking sharply against the metal floor. He dropped the metal onto the desk with a small clink. A silence spread across the room like an oil slick, thick and suffocating. The cadets shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their eyes wide with curiosity. Elias felt every stare burn into him. Here, the officer said, his voice crisp. A medal, awarded for excellence in combat strategy, leadership under pressure, and survival against overwhelming odds. He paused, allowing the words to hang in the air, thickening the mystery around him. This medal is addressed to the unknown cadet in seat 43A. The words stung Elias. Unknown. That was all he was. No one knew him. No one cared. Until now. He looked at the medal, lying on the desk before him like a betrayal. It gleamed under the harsh light, mocking him. He hadn't done anything to earn it. Not in the eyes of anyone who mattered. So why was it here? The officer turned sharply, addressing the class as though he had already dismissed Elias. It was delivered this morning from the Galactic Defense Command. I expect every one of you to understand that this is no simple medal. This is a symbol of humanity's rising influence. His words dripped with disdain, a thinly veiled attempt to rile the cadets. This is not the medal of some unknown soldier. This is the medal of a human. The last word was almost spat from his mouth. Elias's hands clenched, his fingernails digging into his palms. He wasn't some token of a race. He was just a cadet, trying to make his way in a world that didn't want him. But there it was, an award, one that he neither wanted nor understood. Who in the galaxy would award this to a human cadet? Someone in the back whispered. I'm sure it's some sort of mistake, another cadet said under his breath. Must have been sent to the wrong cadet. Elias's gaze flickered to the instructor. Lieutenant Oren was studying him with an unreadable expression, as though she were trying to decipher a riddle. There was no kindness in her eyes, no recognition. Just the cold, sharp stare of someone who had seen too much to care. The officer's voice broke through Elias's thoughts. The medal will be kept here until further instructions come from command. He turned sharply and addressed the rest of the class. It will be studied. This is a rare event in our history. You'll all be tested to see if you are worthy of the title the humans have so casually given themselves. He spat the words as if the very notion of humanity being worthy of anything was absurd. The officer's gaze flickered back to Elias, lingering for a moment. As for you, Cadet Winters, you'll report to Commander Zorak for immediate debriefing. Without another word, the officer turned and left, leaving the room to simmer in 1,000 questions. Elias's mind raced. The whispers continued, growing louder, more insistent. Who is he? What's going on? A human? Here? Elias sat frozen, the medal now an impossible weight on his desk. He didn't dare touch it. Not yet. He couldn't understand why he was the one to receive it, why his name had been called when no one even knew who he was. The thoughts swirled inside him, but there was only one certainty that kept gnawing at him, the one thing that made his stomach twist in knots. He wasn't meant to be here. This was a mistake. And yet, in the pit of his stomach, he knew this mistake was about to change everything. He stood, slowly, almost mechanically, his legs feeling heavier with each step he took toward the door. The eyes of the room burned into him, but Elias couldn't bring himself to care. He was already gone in his mind. What he didn't know yet was that his life, and humanity's fate, had just been set on a path that no one could undo. And it all began with a medal that he hadn't earned, but that would soon define him. Elias Winters wasn't sure what he expected when he stepped out of the classroom, but it certainly wasn't Commander Leona Zorak's icy glare. The woman was a living monument to authority, a towering figure with a reputation that preceded her like a cold wind. She was not someone you crossed. And yet, here he was, standing in her office, the medal still in his hand, unsure of what to do next. Zorak was sitting behind her desk, reviewing a set of data pads. Her posture was immaculate, her expression unreadable. The sharp, angular features of her Yolker heritage made her look perpetually displeased, as if the very idea of humanity being represented by one of her academy's cadets was a personal affront. Cadet Winters, she said without looking up. Her voice was low, each word carrying a weight that made it feel like it could crush you. Sit. Elias didn't hesitate. He sat on the chair across from her, the coldness of it seeping through his uniform. The medal still felt alien in his hands, like it didn't belong in the same room as him. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't a symbol of humanity's greatness. He was just a cadet who had managed to get through a few tests without embarrassing himself. Zorak finally glanced at him, her eyes sharp, assessing. Do you know why you're here? Elias's mouth felt dry. He couldn't stop fidgeting with the medal in his hands, rolling it between his fingers. I assume it's because of the medal, Commander. The faintest of smiles curled on her lips, one that didn't reach her eyes. You assume correctly. But let me be clear, Cadet Winters. You're here because I don't trust this. A medal from Galactic Command? Delivered to you, the Unknown Cadet? I don't believe in coincidences. And I certainly don't believe in this recognition. The words hit him like a slap, but he kept his gaze steady. I don't know what to tell you, Commander. I didn't ask for it. I didn't even know it was coming. Zorak's eyes narrowed. Do you take me for a fool, Cadet? Her tone had shifted, low and dangerous. Do you think I can't see what's happening here? This is a test. Elias swallowed. A test? Yes, she hissed, rising from her chair and walking slowly toward him. She towered over him, a living embodiment of the power she believed she controlled. A test to see if humanity is truly fit for the galactic stage. A test to see if you have what it takes to stand with the other species. You may not have earned this medal, But that doesn't matter now. You're part of something bigger. The question is, will you rise to meet it? Elias was silent for a moment. He had spent so much of his life trying to blend in, trying to avoid the spotlight. But now, it seemed, the spotlight had found him whether he wanted it or not. Zorak was right, this wasn't about him. It was about something much larger than one cadet. I don't know what you expect from me, Commander, he said quietly. I'm just trying to do my best here. I never wanted to be a symbol. Zorak's lips twitched, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing at the corners of her mouth. That's the problem, Cadet. You don't understand. You will be a symbol. Whether you want it or not. And I'll be watching. So will the rest of the galaxy. She turned away from him, walking back to her desk, her every movement exuding control. But before you get any ideas about running from this, let's see if you're truly worthy of this honor. Elias looked at her in confusion. Worthy? Yes, she replied coldly. The Academy doesn't just hand out medals for free. If you think you can take this medal and hide behind it, you're mistaken. We'll see if you've earned it. She paused, watching him closely. Tomorrow. We'll put you through the trials. Elias's stomach dropped. The trials were no joke. They were grueling, designed to push cadets to their absolute limits, to see if they had the physical and mental endurance to survive the harshest conditions. I'm ready, he said before he could stop himself. The words felt like a challenge even to him, but something in his chest, something like pride, or maybe fear, forced them out. Zorak studied him for a long moment. We'll see, she muttered. The next morning, Elias stood at the edge of the training grounds, facing a stark, empty field. Around him, the other cadets had gathered, forming a loose circle as instructors set up the various stations. The air was thick with tension, every cadet wondering just how far the commander was willing to push them. Commander Zorak appeared, flanked by 2 Yilker soldiers. They were carrying a large, heavy-looking crate, and as they placed it on the ground, the cadets fell silent. Zorak's voice rang out. Cadet Winters, step forward. Elias's heart hammered in his chest as he moved to the center of the circle. He could feel every eye on him, every whisper cutting through the air. He clenched his fists at his sides, doing his best to ignore the pricking sensation of nerves that threatened to overtake him. Zorak stood before him, her eyes hard as ice. You'll face a series of challenges designed to test your stamina, intelligence, and combat ability. Fail, and your medal will be revoked. Succeed, and maybe you'll begin to prove that humanity isn't just a passing phase. The trials were swift and unforgiving. Physical challenges, mental puzzles, and simulated combat scenarios, each more brutal than the last. Elias found himself running through simulations of alien landscapes, dodging attacks from all sides, and solving problems that had no clear answer. The most challenging part, though, was the final test, a live simulation against an elite Yilker cadet, a warrior by the name of Tash. The two faced off in a combat arena, the floor littered with obstacles and weapons. Tash was fast, precise, and ruthless. Elias was smaller, but he was no stranger to thinking on his feet. Every move he made was calculated, every strike designed to confuse his opponent. For a long, heart-stopping moment, it felt like Tash had him cornered. But Elias's mind raced, his survival instincts kicking in. He used the terrain, the environment, and his agility to his advantage. And in the end, with a quick feint and a sudden shift, Elias sent Tash to the ground. The arena fell silent. Even Commander Zorak seemed taken aback. Elias stood there, panting, his chest heaving as the reality of what he had just done hit him. He had won. Against the Yilker elite. Against expectations. Against all odds. Zorak's voice broke the silence. Well done, Cadet Winters. You've passed. Her tone was still cold, but there was something else in it now, something Elias couldn't quite place. You've earned your place here. But Elias knew this was just the beginning. The true test was yet to come. The cold light of Nexus Station bathed the training grounds in an eerie glow, casting long shadows across the dusty floors of the combat arena. Elias stood alone, staring at the floor beneath his boots, the sound of his ragged breathing still echoing in his ears from the trials. He had won, against all expectations, against his own doubts. But as the final test came to an end, he was left with a gnawing feeling in his gut that the battle was far from over. His body ached with every movement, the bruises and cuts from the brutal trials still fresh. But his mind was sharper than ever. The medal was now more than a symbol, it was a challenge, one that had drawn him into a galaxy-wide struggle for recognition, for humanity's place among the stars. He couldn't deny it anymore. He was being tested. And there was no turning back. He was jolted from his thoughts by the sudden appearance of Commander Zorak. She was standing at the entrance of the arena, arms crossed, her cold, calculating gaze fixed on him. Her expression was inscrutable, a mask of discipline that never wavered. But Elias could sense something different in her eyes, a flicker of something that wasn't there before. Was it respect? Or just the weight of a challenge that she now knew would be much harder to dismiss? "You've done well," she said, her voice devoid of emotion, yet somehow tinged with something like approval. "But this is just the beginning, Winters. The true test will come soon. And this time, it won't be about proving your strength in combat." Elias's chest tightened. "What do you mean, Commander?" She walked toward him, her footsteps echoing across the empty arena. "You've earned the right to be here, Cadet. But the galaxy isn't just looking at your skills in battle. They're watching you as a symbol. Your actions will shape the future of humanity's place in the galaxy. The next test isn't just for your survival, it's for your humanity." Elias's brow furrowed. "What does that mean? What am I supposed to do?" Zorak paused, her gaze fixed on him. "You'll have to decide. The choice will be yours to make. Soon, you'll receive a summons. A galactic council will meet, and you will be called to represent humanity. What you do next will echo across the stars. Whether you rise as a hero, or fall as a symbol of failure, will depend on how you handle that moment." A chill ran down Elias's spine. He had thought the medal was the end of the road, the point at which he could fade into the background again. But now, it seemed the real battle was just beginning. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation and uncertainty. Elias trained harder than ever, pushing his body and mind to their limits. But despite his relentless effort, a part of him felt disconnected, as if he were standing at the edge of a cliff, unable to see what lay below. The weight of the medal, no longer a symbol of pride, but a burden, felt heavier with every passing hour. Then, one morning, as he was running through a series of combat drills, an officer arrived at the training grounds with a formal-looking data pad in hand. The moment Elias saw the officer, his heart skipped a beat. He knew what was coming. "Cadet Winters," the officer said, his voice cold. "You're summoned. The council is ready to meet you." Elias's legs went stiff. The moment he had dreaded had arrived. He had no choice but to follow the officer, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. As they made their way through the station, Elias could feel the eyes of every cadet on him, the whispers that had once seemed like background noise now buzzing like 1,000 angry bees. By the time they reached the council chamber, Elias was trembling, not from fear, but from the overwhelming realization that his life was no longer his own. The door slid open, and he stepped into a room unlike anything he had ever seen before. The chamber was vast, its walls lined with holographic displays showing images of distant star systems and alien civilizations. In the center, a long table stretched out, around which sat representatives from every known species in the galaxy. There were towering beings from the Yilker, slender diplomats from the Vashari, and even the enigmatic Tesseran, whose faces were hidden beneath intricate masks. At the head of the table, a figure Elias recognized immediately, Grand Admiral Rhalar, one of the highest-ranking officials in the Galactic Defense Command. His reputation for cold efficiency was legendary, and his piercing, calculating gaze made Elias feel like a mere child standing before him. "Cadet Winters," Rhalar's voice echoed across the chamber, deep and resonant. "We've been waiting for you." Elias's stomach twisted. He swallowed, trying to steady his nerves. "I'm here, sir." The Admiral didn't respond immediately. Instead, he motioned for a Tesseran representative to speak. The Tesseran's voice was low and melodic, its tone oddly calming. "We have reviewed your record, Cadet Winters. Your actions on Nexus Station have been impressive, but they are not what concern us now." Elias's heart began to race again. "What do you mean?" "We are not here to evaluate your combat prowess," the Tesseran continued. "We are here to see if humanity can control its instincts. If you, as a representative of your species, are capable of leading, not with force, but with reason, diplomacy, and restraint." Elias felt a cold sweat bead on his forehead. This wasn't a test of strength, it was a test of humanity itself. They were looking for something he had never been taught to show: compassion, restraint, the ability to lead without violence. "The choice is yours, Cadet," RHLR spoke again, his voice like ice. "You can either join us in shaping the future of the galaxy, or you can be cast aside as a relic of a warlike species, forever branded as a symbol of humanity's inability to evolve." Elias looked around the room, his eyes flicking to the faces of the alien representatives. They were all watching him, waiting for his response. The pressure was unbearable, and yet, in that moment, something inside him clicked. This was no longer about him. It was about his people. It was about humanity's place in the universe. And he was going to fight for it, without violence, without the need to prove his strength with fists or weapons. "I choose to lead," Elias said, his voice steady, even as his heart pounded in his chest. "I choose to prove that humanity's worth isn't defined by our ability to fight, but by our ability to connect, to understand, and to rise above the past." There was a long silence in the room. The alien representatives exchanged glances, murmuring quietly amongst themselves. Finally, RHLR nodded, his expression unreadable. "Very well," he said, the corners of his mouth twitching slightly. "We will see if your words hold true. The galaxy will be watching." As Elias left the council chamber, he realized that the hardest part was still ahead of him. The trials were not over. They had just begun. But for the first time, he was no longer fighting for survival, he was fighting for humanity's place in the stars. And he wouldn't back down.